indescribable, man. I think I just laid there. I was like, finally, man. You know, the guys did a great job of giving me a crease. You know, they just trust me enough to hit what I see and, you know, make something happen. And, you know, I think that's what I did.
Middle, front row, John.
For both of you guys, level of concern when it was 21-7 early on.
We've been down before. You know, there was no level of panic. You know, it's just fight through a little adversity. You know, that's the biggest measurement of a team. You know, how you bounce back when things aren't going your way. So, you know, we just had to dig deep. You know, get back to our roots, start tackling better. You know, covering a little better, and, you know, getting pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, we weren't worried. We weren't worried. In fact, we actually talked about it last night as a team. We knew the first two games we were really never punched in the face. Everything was going so smoothly. And it's not going to be a fairy tale the whole entire season. There's going to come a point in time where we were going to get punched in the face, where we were going to get back in the corner. And playing with these guys, I'm so proud of the way we bounced back when we were back in that corner. We fought back, and we stuck together and rode that wave, and we were good enough to get it done.
Front row for the right, Adam.
Question for Jake, and actually kind of hit on part of it. So, just having been backed into a corner, what was the conversation like with you guys on the field and the huddle during that time when it looked like Colorado had an advantage?
For me personally, I was just trying to go to guys like, look, all it takes is one play. We needed a spark. We just needed a spark. We got that punt block, and then they responded again. But we fought back again. We just kept punching back. We just kept telling these older guys, this group of seniors and our playmakers, look, we just need to start making plays. And towards the end of the half, that's exactly what we did. And then I think that was a huge play was Darbo going in and punching that screen pass into play to give us momentum going into the second half. The defense tightened up, and they played a hell of a game down the stretch too.
I have one more for you. It's in Wilton, shaky start, but it seemed like once he started finding rhythm, he was dumping the ball off to you. It seemed like he was getting a little bit of stability there. What did you notice about his comfort comfort level throughout the game?
Yeah, it's Wilton, it's the coaches, it's the O-line, it's never a one-man job. Again, yeah, we did have a shaky start. Again, they were making it really hard to run the ball. They were run blitzing us, loading the box up. The coaches adjusted. They started calling little dump-off plays to help Wilton get into rhythm. Guys were making plays, helping him get comfortable. We had a little package in there. We got some yards with Pep and McDoom, and we just kept making plays down the stretch. That's all that really matters.
Front row, all the way to the left, Larry.
Jabrill, can you talk about giving up another big play, two straight weeks? Is that something that you guys definitely need to work on in the Big Ten season?
Absolutely. We definitely have to get the big plays corrected. But the best part about it is, there are things we all can correct. It's not like they were just flat out beating us. It's everything can be coached up and and corrected. So, we took a couple lumps today, but at the end of the day, man, when we go back and watch the tape, we know those big plays don't happen if we spin to the deep middle. First touchdown was my fault actually. I didn't spin fast enough, and just eye discipline. That's really it, man. It wasn't that they were just flat out better than us in those plays. It's just things we all can correct.
Front row, all the way to the right.
Hey guys, Zeke with Blueprint. Did Colorado surprise you at all when they came out first quarter? Just maybe in scheme or size, speed in any way?
I don't know that they surprised us. We knew they were a good team. I mean, they had the number one. I think it was the number one ranked defense nationally. We knew it was going to be a challenge. We knew they had playmakers on offense, and they were going to do some things on special teams. It didn't really surprise us, but again, it just goes back to there's going to come a point in time where things aren't going to go well, and that's exactly what was happening to us. It seemed like nothing was clicking early on. We just found a way. It wasn't pretty, but it was good enough to get the job done. That's just really the name of the game.
Absolutely. For the left, gentleman standing up. For both of you guys, it's the first game that Tom Brady's ever been back to the big house. I'm just wondering, what did it mean to you guys and to the team to have him come address the team and just be involved?
Whenever you have one of the greats come back and talk to you, it definitely gives you a boost. We definitely felt, what he told us in the locker room, it definitely honed in with us, and we just tried to go out there, play our best. Started out a little sluggish, but like they always say, man, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And when it came down to it, we just toughened up and dug out a victory.
Also standing to the left, Wojo.
For both players, I'm wondering about your level of exhaustion right now. How many plays you played, and for you, Jabrill, do you know how many you played, and how can you keep that pace up?
Just treatment. Our strength and training staff does a great job with us. Getting our bodies back. you know, as far as our nutrition, you know, keeping us at the par. You know, I don't really think about it as, you know, how many plays I played. I'm just doing whatever I got to do to help us win the game. You know, I think that goes for both of us.
Yeah, we were just actually talking about out there, like we were so happy and grateful it was such a hot summer, hot camp. Our strength coach was pushing us to our limit all summer in conditioning. And, you know, I mean, you know the story with Coach Harbaugh and how he does camps. He's going to push us to our limit and then some. So on a game like today, it pays off. And honestly, you're going to get tired in games like this, especially when our numbers are being called upon so much. But it's all that matters is winning. All that matters is getting the job done. That trumps it all. Whether you're tired or not, you just find a way.
Exactly. When you're tired, you just, you know, what I got to do, coach, you know, to get this W. Especially when you're down. You know, you don't even think about being tired when you're down. You know, you're just thinking about what I got to do to get this win, dig deep. You know, that's why you feel your well in camp. You know, so when it's time to go back in that well and pull something out, if you haven't filled that well the way you were supposed to, you know, there'll be nothing there. But you know, luckily, you know, we were pushed to limits that we couldn't even imagine, you know, and you know, we dug deep and we pulled out the victory.
First row, right in front of you guys, Josh.
This is for Jabrill. You mentioned earlier in the season getting caught by the Minnesota kicker. Take me just through this run, and was it a sense of relief just you know, finally getting that touchdown?
It was definitely a sense of relief, man. You know, I felt like a couple of those punts I could have had. You know, I definitely could have taken one back. You know, they were a great tackling team. You know, they were shooting ahead, you know, wrapping up. But when you get a line drive and great blocking, man, if you don't score it in, they got to put somebody else back there. You know, so that's just how I felt, man. You know, the hole was wide open. You know, they leave it upon me to make a couple guys miss it. You know, I felt as though I did that. You know, I started cramping about the 5, but I was like, there's no way I'm not getting in this time. I was tired of just being an almost kind of guy, you know, so it definitely felt good to finally punch on it.
Second row, all the way to the right, Michelle.
This is a question for Jake. Is this on?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
What was it like to walk out there with Brady as honorary captain? Was it a little bit surreal? And were there any nerves at the beginning of the game knowing he was watching so close?
It was special. I went and I shook his hand before in the locker room. You can kind of just feel his presence, and you can kind of just look in his eyes and know he's, you know, you can just tell the way he carries himself why he's one of the greatest of all time. And it's special. It's special to be a captain here already, but the lineup we've had with honorary captains going on, it just shows why Michigan's such a great place. As far as the nerves go, not really. We weren't really nervous because Brady was in attendance. You know, you're out on the field, you're not really worrying about who's watching what or who's doing what. You just focus on doing your job.
Any other questions for Jake and Jabrill? Back here to Wojo.
Jabrill, do you have like a pitch limit, so to speak, a number of plays where you just can't go any further? Do you know how many plays you ran?
No, there's no
today?
pitch limit or, you know, whatever that you said. You know, practice is harder than the games, you know, because I'm bouncing around so much, you know, so I take practice as almost conditioning. So when I get out here, you know, things just slow down for me. You know, I get little breaks when the offense is out there. You know, the special team units that I'm not on, you know, I get those breaks as opposed to practice. I don't get those breaks, you know. So, you know, the level of the exhaustion in practice is definitely great, in my opinion.
Front row, just to the right, Angelique.
Jake, you sort of touched on it earlier about the fairy tale season. I mean, did you guys need a game like this, both of you? I mean, a sort of kick in the pants kind of game?
To be honest, I think we did. I really do think we did because it's only going to get tougher from here. And, you know, honestly, this was not our best week of practice. It really wasn't. And one thing we stress all the time is you're gonna play how you practice and how you prepare. And it really wasn't our best week of practice, but you know, we just found a way to get it done, and we can look back and learn from this. If we want to be the best team in the country, or one of the best teams in the country, we got to practice like it, we got to play like it, we got to prepare like it, and execute like it. So it wasn't pretty. It wasn't our best game by any means. It was good enough to get the job done, though. And thankfully, we can go back and make the corrections, knowing that we won this game.
Absolutely. And on a defensive standpoint, you know, we definitely need that as a defense, you know, because you know, the first 2 games, you know, we definitely, you know, beat them up pretty badly on the defensive side of the ball early on. You know, they came out here ready to go. You know, you said where we shot. We weren't shocked, but we were just surprised at how, you know, how ready those guys were. You know, they didn't waste any time. You know, they opened up the bag of tricks right and early. But, you know, like I said before, the measurement of a defense is how you respond through adversity. You know, we dug deep. You know, guys made great plays at crucial times in the game. You know, special teams played a big part again in this game. You know, got a block punt for a touchdown. And, you know, I definitely think that was the turning point of the game.